Oh,
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole White. I am so honored and so pleased to have my good friend Harmony West here, Harmony Rose West here with us. I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we're just going to jump in. Harmony, over to you.
okay. Well, um, I consider myself a creative crone, and my newest business, and I've been doing for the last few years, is Mushroom Mama, which is a family of medicinal mushroom teas. But it's one thread in the tapestry of all kinds of things that I do. I'm an energy medicine worker, a Reiki master, and I love to create. I love to make things. I've made a deck of cards called Bless You Mom, Conscious Thoughts for the Mothering Journey, which is about 10 years old now. And if you came to my house, you would see there's creativity everywhere. So that's why I like to think of myself as a creative crone.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Harmony and I, we've known each other, gosh, I think it's been 8 years. 8 years, and we were both at a similar place where we worked for a period of time. And we've come together for this conversation to really talk about creativity and, in my mind, really unleashing the parameters around creativity. So something for me is I've been wanting to do this YouTube, video series channel for a long time, and I was stuck because I do health stuff, I do art stuff, and a lot of the masculine energy and business people and marketing people out there, they're like, pick one thing, pick a niche, and just focus on that, master on that. And that thinking actually kept me very stuck. And Harmony and I had a conversation about this, and where we are just both more of this fluid, feminine energy where we love variety and love the freedom, right? It's really about freedom. Creativity is freedom to do all of these different things. So, Harmony, tell us about, kind of like that conversation we had the other day about just wanting to be free in it, right?
This whole idea that we're supposed to do one thing, that we're supposed to pick one thing and get to be an expert at it. I've struggled with that for years and years, Nicole. When I was doing energy work, I would have people in the know saying, choose one thing, either do the energy medicine or the Reiki or whatever. And it just didn't feel right to me. It just feels like that's, if we want to use the word masculine, a more masculine way to do it. And as a feminine being, there's all kinds of things that I love. And I've gotten used to the idea that in my world, I have lots of different streams of income because I have lots of streams of creativity. I forgot to tell you, for 20 years, I was an early childhood educator. I founded my own preschool and ran it for 20 years. And at the very beginning, even of that, I was told, you can't do this because you don't have the credentials. You don't have this. And I marched to my own drummer. So I was like, that was more fuel for, oh, watch me. I'm going to do what I want to do. So as women entrepreneurs, I feel like we're discovering how to do this cooperative way of being creative, cooperative within ourselves, and cooperative with each other. I'm not very competitive. I want everyone to thrive, and so I may not call myself an artist because I get afraid of what that label is, but I feel totally comfortable calling myself a creative, because creativity comes in so many different ways, right? So that's a few thoughts that I have.
Absolutely. And a conversation we were having before we hit record, and I was like, wait, this is so good. We got to put this on. Is how so many people are damaged. That's the only word that could come to mind right now, when they're younger, by a teacher or an adult or someone, where as children, until we're broken down into realizing and being aware of the shoulds and the shouldn'ts of quote unquote society, children are free beings, right? They will break out into song, they will break out into dance, they will draw with confidence and know exactly what they're doing. And just like walking or talking or learning that the spoon goes in here and not in here, when we nurture that, we are all creative. And unfortunately, it gets broken and damaged in so many places. I've had clients who were told as a young person, oh, you can't sing, 3-4 years old. Similar to the story Harmony is going to tell you. And that sticks in their mind. So even if their heart wants to do it, such an early age, they got this judgment, and it just changes their trajectory of their born natural creativity. Harmony, tell the story you just told me.
Yes. Yes. Well, I want to say also, you and I both have studied hypnotherapy. We're both hypnotherapists. And what we learned is there are incidents that happen to all of us called ISEs, initial sensitizing events. And they are basically when we are sovereign beings that are excited about life. We're children doing what we do, and somebody shuts us down. Somebody shames us, and they're authority figures, so they can be our parents, they can be our teachers. That happens over and over. Brene Brown talks about how many people have shame from being in school and having a teacher say something that was not helpful to them in front of everyone else. So the story that I had told Nicole earlier was, I was an early childhood educator for 20 years, and I went to a local museum to facilitate an activity with a bunch of preschoolers. And there was a man there with a puppet truck. And he had all these puppets, and he was doing a thing for the kids. And at one point, he asked one of the children, well, he asked, who would like to sing? And a 4-year-old girl sang this beautiful song, like full voice singing. And I'm like, yay, you go, girl. And one of the puppets shamed her and told her what a bad job she did. And I just wanted to kick his butt, actually. I went to the people in charge and said, this is not okay. And they said, go get him, which I did. I went and said, as an early childhood educator, you are undoing everything I do, because she's passionate about being able to sing. She doesn't have thoughts. She doesn't have any thoughts that she can't sing. She just sings. And he didn't like my feedback at all, but it wasn't even a person that was shaming. It was a puppet that was shaming. So I wanted to tell that story, and then I want to say, and now, and I've had lots of things about singing. When I was younger, I wouldn't have opened my mouth because of being shamed when I was younger. And now I belong to a song circle, and every voice is welcome. And it's so beautiful to sing together with other people. And so I told my mom, my 91-year-old mom, that I was loving singing. And she said, oh, maybe you'll be a singer. And I was like, but we're all singers. I'm sure she was going to the American Idol kind of thing. Maybe you'll be a singer. And I'm like, no, I am a singer, because we all are singers, because we all were born with voices. So I think many of us, whether it's around singing or drawing or painting, have these initial sensitizing events that some adult that didn't know, they just didn't know that what they were doing was cramping our creativity and our natural goddess given right to create.
Yes, yes. So Harmony, I can hear you really well, but your video is a little choppy, but we're just gonna deal with it. It's okay. I love this conversation.
You know, I live in the mountains, Nicole, I live in the mountains, and it snowed 6 inches, maybe 8 inches last night.
Wow.
So we've brushed off all the snow that we can. And yeah, we get what we can.
Yeah, you're lucky.
And
Yeah,
I'm plugged in. I
exactly.
have a DSL.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's fine. I can hear you well. So at least there's that. That's good. How do let's give some really good nuggets to people who are listening who doubt their creativity. I mean, I've been a creative all my life, and as Harmony and I were just talking about, I am just finally starting to put some of my things out there. In my mid 40s, I've been painting or drawing in some way, shape, or form for almost 30 years. And how do we help people undo that stuff? Because those are the memories that stick. That puppeteer that did that horrible thing, probably unconsciously, to that little girl, unfortunately, that will probably stick with her unless she had enough people around her to go, no, he was wrong. It was part of the show. Unless somebody is there to nurture you out of some of those traumas that teachers or parents or just outside people will give. How do people take back that creativity that we are all born with, that confidence in the creativity, whatever it is, singing, drawing, acting, dancing, writing? How do we start taking that back for people who have been damaged in that way?
Well, not being an expert in that area at all, except for myself, I think a lot of it is paying attention to what it is we're naturally drawn to. Like for me, I've always loved to sing. So I would sing in the shower, I would sing in the bathtub. Bless my husband. He has heard me sing to Joni Mitchell, top of my lungs, not being able to hit those soprano notes, but it was what filled my heart. And I think paying attention to what it is that we're drawn to, over and over, singing was like that for me. And also, like you, Nicole, my whole life, I've had something in my hands that I was making. When I was a young girl, TV wasn't all that old. There were 3 stations, but that was my family's entertainment at night. So while we were watching television and I wanted to be with my family, I always had some embroidery or handwork or something. I liked fabric. So I think, so I did that just instinctively. I would crochet, So I think it's tuning into naturally what we love to do, staying in our body. I know a lot of us leave our bodies. Wouldn't you leave your body? If so, like what that means is they know better than I. If somebody tells you something, you're like, oh, well, you're an adult, you know better. And I think it's time that a lot of us are coming into our own sovereignty, our own bodies, and saying, wait a minute, this is about me, not about what you think about me. It's what I think about me. So I think it's reclaiming that this is our space and that we all have different gifts, talents, and abilities. I've never liked the word expert. You know, people would tell me, even when I was doing energy medicine, you're an expert in this, share your expertise. I like to be an enthusiast because that leaves me lots of room to grow and to be bigger. And when I'm an expert, somehow it feels like I know it all and I've got it all together. So I think it's for us tuning into what it is we love. You know, I've always loved really good food. Other people haven't. You know, when I was younger, I did yoga. People thought it was wackadoodle. Well, no one does anymore, right? But when I was 15 doing yoga, standing on my head, everybody was making fun of me. So I would tell people less and less and do what I wanted to do, regardless of what their opinions were. You know, and being a hypnotherapist, I also know that if you, us, we continually hear in our heads things like, I can't do that, I can't do that. Looking for where that came from and challenging that, mending that inside and saying, actually, I can do that if it's important enough for me to want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a few thoughts off the top of my beautiful hat.
Yes. Yes. And some of the other things that I like to share with people is, you know, when we're a kid, we do these things without thinking too far ahead until there's judgment, and then we start judging ourselves. And I think that there's such a humongous level of perfectionism, and the definition that I'm using of perfectionism is we don't attempt something because we feel like if we can't do it perfect or right the first time, we're not willing to look like a fool or make a mistake. And these are the things that I try to help people to just, you know, that's the thing that we need to move through, is this perfectionism. So if I teach a watercolor class, and people are like, oh, I'm not that good, you know, oh, why can't I do what you do? And I'm like, I've been watercoloring for 20 years. So I'm showing you a technique, and all you need to do is do it more and more and more often. And with time, you'll get it. And people get things at different times. And the other thing I share with people, and it's so important, is spend a few minutes, like even if it's just 5 minutes a day, doing what you love: drawing, painting, sculpture, music, writing. Same thing when I wrote my book. It wasn't like, when the time is perfect, I'll sit down and write. It's more like, let me get in the habit of doing a little bit every single day. And some days it's 5 minutes and I'm like, forget this, I'm going out. And other days I did the 5 minutes, which turned into 10 or 20 or 30 different increments. And other days I could write most of the day. So it's really showing up each day as much as you can, but being engaged with it, right? So,
yes.
so like singing.
Yes, and
Go on.
And letting yourself be a learner. That is what you were just sharing, is so important, because we live in a culture where we're seeing like a finished product, and we don't see all that went into it. Or we see, you know, this person is so great at this, and, you know, they're an overnight success. You know, that's not really very common at
It's
all.
not true.
And I noticed that for myself too, how I can get so frustrated sometimes with myself if I'm not good at something right away. But How many times do we not even try something that we're even curious about because we're not good at it?
Right.
You know, I just signed up for this clay class, and I've not done clay before, you know, little bits here and there, but, and so it's called Fat and Happy Birds. And so you have to make this armature of this bird and put the clay over it. And I kind of suck at it because I've never done it before. But I don't really. It's my mind that thinks that. It's me being like, this is something new. Let's try this, you know. And my husband even came in and said, what are you doing? And I was saying something new because I'm creative and I want to try something else on that I've never done. So how can we be great at something? It's like we've heard over and over again. When you're learning to walk, you don't fall down and say, crap, I'm never going to try this again, you know, or talking. Like being a human is you got to start at square one, and then, and you might find that you're naturally good at doing clay, but you might find out, I might find out that I'm not. But I totally can make a bird, you know. And I want to say, watching my grandchildren, it's fascinating to be with them because my granddaughters will come over a lot and they go right to the markers, right to drawing, doing anything creative. And the younger they are, the easier it is for them. The more they've gone into school and started having lessons, the harder it is for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because their thoughts start coming in of what it's supposed to look like. And yeah, rather than being in that naturally creative process.
Yeah. I remember a story of this guy who he had wanted to go to this particular college, and he knew it from junior high school. It was what the main goal was. And he received an application and he was filling certain things out. And it came to a point and he wasn't applying for art school or anything, but it said, draw your future or something like that. And flashback to him being in kindergarten and his teacher literally telling him, you can't draw. See all these other kids around you, they're drawing, you can't draw. And what did he do? And here he is, an 18-year-old guy filling out an application for the school. He has put all of his eggs in that basket. You know, that's his dream school. They asked him to draw something. He literally put the application away and applied to another school. And that hit me so hard because he really let in what that, you know, pardon my French, ignorant teacher said to him when he was in kindergarten. And he let it in all those years that he never picked up a pencil to draw, never did anything, you know, with a visual creativity. He was more of a writing, which is a creativity. I mean, art is everywhere. It's cooking, it's gardening, it's writing, it's the physical, visual form of art. It's relationships. Relationships are an art. So I think it's important if you're interested in doing an art process or you want to put yourself out there as an artist of any kind, to look back at what those judgments are, where they came from, and then literally kind of giving it the finger, right? And just being like, oh no, you don't rule my life anymore. And sometimes it takes a little more finesse.
Well, yeah, well, you know, those initial sensitizing events that I was talking about earlier, after a while, we don't need the person who told us that anymore. Because if we agree with them, we tell ourselves that over and over.
That's right.
I can't do that. I'm not good at that. You know, I have a memory of being in the second grade. And never forget, Jim Brown was one of my little friends, and we painted. We had to paint, and he painted the sky brown. Who knew that the child was colorblind? Learned that later, right? But he painted the sky brown, and the teacher shamed him so much in front of everyone that I was like, oh, I'm never going to let that happen to me. And so I think, it's all over the place, and it's us challenging,
Mhm.
those messages that we were given rather than just agreeing and saying, you're right, I can't sing, I can't draw. Because like you said, creativity is everywhere, and we are creative beings. That
Yeah,
is just the part of the nature of being human.
yeah,
And because I worked with preschoolers and such young children for so much of my life, it helped heal a lot of that for me. Because as I was there supporting them and saying, you go, you can do this, I was also giving bits of that to myself, saying, let's heal any of those young memories that I have that says you can't do those kinds of things, because I saw they were innately creative. Children are innately creative and noisy and messy, like
yeah,
we all are, right? Rather than taking our creativity and squelching it and having it be in some culturally acceptable box. I've
yeah,
always been a rebel, so
yeah,
I love thinking out of the box.
yeah. I saw I saw this picture, and basically a child had drawn on the wall, and the parent made a frame or got a frame, put it right over the drawing, and then made oh, my child, the date, how old, and named it. And
Oh,
those things bring me to tears. I mean, there is so much. I love my folks. They did the best they could. But there was a lot of trauma, because I remember as a young girl, my brothers and I, we were all sitting in the hallway for some reason. And I think it was Easter, and we had all this stuff, and there was a pencil in there. And I started drawing on the wall. And the way that my mother responded, you would have thought I like threw an heirloom porcelain vase out the window and shattered it forever. I mean, she beat me. and so
wow.
now when I see
Wow.
parents and there's drawing on the wall, and they're like, oh, just excuse that, and they put their child ahead of, ooh, we need a clean house, and again, I mean, I've got a great relationship with my mom now, and we laugh about all those things now, but it was traumatic at the time to have that experience. And so, but every time I see a parent nurturing their child in that way, like their art is on the wall, or either taped to the wall or literally drawn on the wall, I'm so grateful for that experience. And I can step into it, try to reimagine myself as a child, and just imagine, my mom patting me on the head instead of, slapping me for doing something like that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, around art and creativity, I've always been creative, but I'm, for whatever reason, and maybe I believe everything happens for a reason, and there's a reason for everything. But I painted a lot when I was 16, and at that time I was very depressed. Just a lot of different dark things and hard things that happened. And my grandmother, who, a little context, her son worked at an art, uh, they worked with fine art, right? So very high-end artists, mostly very beautiful things, very colorful, either floral or figurative. And she walked in and saw my paintings, which I hung on my wall, and I was kind of proud of. And she's like, these belong in a cave, which I took as, these just need to be, no one needs to see your paintings. These are pretty ugly. That's how I took it. And
Mm.
and I know that that's what kept me from really putting my work out there for so long, just thinking that there was something wrong with me,
Mm.
something too dark in me, and that no one needed to see this crap, right? But it never stopped me from doing it. I have destroyed most of my work, but now I'm at a place
Oh.
where I've really stepped into it, and I believe there's something for everyone. There's going to be people who like my work and people who don't like my work. And I'm going to choose to pay attention to those who like my work. And I happen to like my work. So that's really all that matters, right? Is that you love the process,
Right.
right? You love your
Mm.
work. You love your growth in the work. You love your struggles in the work. And I think
Right.
we need to take
And
that back. Yeah,
you made up, maybe you made up that she was the expert and you weren't. So
absolutely.
she knew and you didn't. I taught art in a private school, private local school, and there was a little girl and boy, and their mother was an artist, and her art was extraordinary. And those children were, especially the little girl, paralyzed to do their artwork. We were doing self-portraits, which I did mine, and it wasn't like an expert drawing, but she was bawling her head off. And I know it's, whatever stuff she had going on about not being able to do this as good as mom. And mom would come into the art room. I always wanted to say, could you leave now? And she was a lovely woman and her art was amazing, but her children were, especially one of her children, were pretty paralyzed by, her expertness, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think, many of us, we just have to investigate some of that within us and decide if we want to live there our whole lives. I mean, I'm 66 years old and I'm doing new things because why not? New creativity and loving it, loving that I can start at zero and be a learner. And
Yeah.
I think that is huge for a lot of us, to
Yeah.
allow ourselves to be learners and not be great at something that we've not done. And we've listened to other people say you're not good at it. So,
Right.
and I don't think these people are trying to be mean, but the younger you are, the deeper it goes into your subconscious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Harmony and I, we're both Sagittarians, and we have that adventurous
Yay!
spirit. We're naturally this, in some ways clumsy. I definitely see myself more clumsy than graceful. And and I think it's a little easier for us than some people to just love the newness of jumping in and experimenting. But
Mm.
I feel it's something that everyone can do if we let go of the outcome and just enjoy the experience of the experience, right? Of trying something new or being willing, I forget who said it, but just being willing to suck, right? Like if you haven't done something before, we forget as a child, we got up and fell hundreds and thousands of times, and never did we say to ourselves, oh, this walking thing, I'll never get it, right? Forget it. I'll just crawl my whole life. No one does that. But it's this programming as we get older, this expectation that we need to be good. And we can also say the same with social media. It's so easy for people to present their best selves on social media, their vacations or their finished artwork. But we don't see the thousands of hours maybe that person worked in order to take that vacation, right? Or the 50,000 drawings that it took for someone to finally get to a point where they're like, yes, this is my style, this is where I feel good. So I think giving yourself the opportunity to just experiment and to be in the process,
Mm.
that's what I
Mm.
love the most.
I totally agree.
I love when something comes out
I
that I
totally
like.
agree.
Yeah, but I love doing it. Like I used to do pottery, and just being on the wheel and having that clay spin and having that earth in my hand, I didn't even really care about anything else. I just wanted that experience over and over and over again. So, and I think it's healthy for
I
our
love.
minds to do things out of our comfort level. Let's talk on this a little, Harmony, about, when we do the same thing because we know we're good at it, but we stay away from something new because we're afraid we won't be good at it. That's growth, right? I mean, we came into this world not being able to know how to do anything. And these young, precious years, that's all we're doing, learning new things, learning new things, learning new things. And I personally believe it's important to continue. It's important to continue to be really bad at something, right? And to either be like, no, not interested, or like, yeah, I want to figure this out.
Well, I'm laughing because my 6-year-old granddaughter, Maya, drew a picture of me the other day. And, I've got big old lips and an enormous nose. And she was so proud of this. And I was so thrilled by her effort, which wasn't an effort. She just sat down and said, I'm going to draw you, and did it. So I also want to say, for a lot of my life, I've been a self-help junkie. I'm kind of a recovering self-help junkie. But I studied guilt and shame like crazy, starting with John Bradshaw in the 70s. And a lot of people know Brene Brown now because of her groundbreaking research work that she does. But the distinction between guilt, I made a mistake, and shame, I am a mistake. Something's wrong with me. Gosh. So I've been challenging that for a long time and doing a lot of healing around that. And last year I went to Nepal and spent 3 weeks in Nepal. And I started thinking and realizing this "something is wrong with me" is a real Western idea. People in Nepal weren't walking around with the people that I encountered did not seem to have that going on. And I also remember, Nicole, a bunch of meditation teachers getting together with the Dalai Lama. And they were talking to him about what we as Westerners do with some of the teachings. And he couldn't quite grok what they were talking about because it's not how he thinks. It's not how people in the East, I know I'm generalizing, but it's not how they think. So this idea that there's something wrong with us, that we're not worthy, that we're not enough, really needs to be challenged. Children do not have that. They are not born with that. When we domesticate them, we give them those ideas, and it's up to us to challenge them if we don't want to live like a defective human for our whole lives. There's nothing wrong with us. So I think for me, a lot of healing was done around shame. That there's something wrong with me. I totally believed that for years. And now I know there's nothing effing wrong with me. I'm a sovereign, lovely being like all of us are. And we have some funky ideas. We have some funky ideas about creativity. And, I just feel like it's worth jumping in and, trying it out. So hearing you talk about pottery, I'm like, ooh. So when I'm in my little clayness, making my fat and happy bird, I can just go to my friend Nicole, who, in my my, inside of me, and know that you love that, and just draw on the love for that and have that be inspiring me. Instead of this competition, you can do it, I can't.
Yeah.
Instead, I like the cooperation. And I like being able to say, yay, if she can do that, then I can do that. Why not?
I love that. I love that idea of, that's such a great idea. A great way to think about it is to, when you want to experiment with something or try something new or try something again, and you feel like you can't, to literally embody someone who you know who can. And how healing is that? How much more motivating is that? How much more are you going to enjoy it and do it if you can imagine stepping into this person who is good at it and who loves it, as well as being willing to suck, right? That's how you're going to move through those hurdles. The perfectionism.
And yeah, that perfectionism also, is part of shame.
Yeah,
Don't do it unless you totally can excel at it. And
yeah,
it's like, I'm a pretty good cook, but I've been cooking for 50 years. So at the beginning, I remember feeding my friend Denise. I was so excited. I had my first apartment and Denise was coming over, and we were both vegetarians at the time, and I was going to make her a lentil soup. It was totally raw. We couldn't eat it because what did I know about cooking? I can make a rocking lentil soup right now. Do you know? So I think it's loving ourselves regardless of whether we're good at something, whether we're not good at it. It really all comes back down to self-love, showing up for ourselves as deeply as we can in all the ways that we're human.
yeah,
Right? Because nobody else is going to love us the way we're going to love us.
right.
And so that love helps us be adventurous and curious. And I'd much rather be curious about whether I could do something or not, right? And then notice places that I've got blocks. And, for example, I'm in this song circle. And so right now we're meeting on Zoom, and totally challenging to do that. But someone said, bring your songs from YouTube. Ooh, totally stressed me out. But I noticed I was stressed out about that. What I wanted to do was show up and sing. I don't want to do the technology part. So all I had to do was say, I don't want to do the technology part. All I want to do is sing. And they were totally fine with it because there are other people who can do the technology part and like it.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think it's getting, being brave enough to be in our own lives and say, what is it that is in me that's wanting expression? Because we're expressive beings.
right.
And then noticing places where we're like, oh, I'm a little nervous, oh, I'm a little scared. And then challenging those, for
Yeah,
me anyway.
yeah. And I love that, especially the story with the lentil soup. I mean, you can look back and laugh at it. And I think laughter and just not taking ourselves and our lives so freaking seriously is essential as well. Because that's a creativity too, right? To look back at something and go, oh my gosh, but have this humor and laughter and growth from it, instead of this shame, blame, oh my gosh, I need to hide that story. It was so horrible. So,
I used to think about life being like, and I still do, like a tapestry. It's like a weaving, and there's all these different threads in our lives that, the thread of cooking, the thread of this relationship, the thread of our relationships with our parents, all these threads. And when I was younger, there were parts that I wanted to rip out and throw away. And now I see that there's some healing that needs to be done sometimes. Sometimes I need to tie a knot in some of those threads. You know, sometimes there are threads that are shorter than other threads. There are threads that are longer, but they're all part of the tapestry of who I am and my life. And I want to be kind to myself. I want to love myself. Nobody can show up for me the way I can show up for me. And I will acknowledge many of us have all kinds of wounds from our childhood, from being a baby, because we were raised by people who had their wounds. But we're the ones that have to show up for ourselves. So I think we need to take our attention away from the outside and bring it to the inside, you know, and say, are there things, cooking, pottery, any kinds of creativity that I keep wanting to do and that I'm not doing for some particular reason, and challenge those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, the creativity, it looks different for different people. And when people say I'm not creative, I think that's so damaging to say about yourself. And I like to challenge people on that. Like, I see women who are so fashionable. I remember this one woman, and I remember seeing her one day, and her hat, her lipstick, and her shoes all matched. And then the other things that she was wearing just kind of coordinated with it. And every time I saw her, there was this clear coordination that she had, and it was effortless for her. And I said to her, I'm like, this is really effortless for you, isn't it? She's like, oh, I love it. You know, a huge closet and all these clothes and makeup and everything. And for me, that would be stressful. I keep my clothes as simple, you know, simple, comfortable, they fit. There we go. Every once in a while, if I have to, but I admired her creativity because she was her canvas, right? Every day when she got up and she decided what she puts on. My mom and one of my sister-in-laws are very, very beautiful and girly girl like that. The hair, the nails, the makeup, the clothes. And I used to feel bad about myself. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I felt bad about myself. I felt like I was less of a woman because I wasn't this polished person. And when I moved in my early 20s to Seattle, and then Portland, and then the Bay Area, and then Arizona, and then New Mexico, it was like, oh, okay, you know, these are my people where, you know, we dress a little more comfortably. You know, a lot of people get creative, but I admire it, and I see the creativity and the spark in them because that's what's important to them. And it's a beautiful art. Our body, you know, we see it now a lot with people with their tattoos and piercings and stuff. They've made their body their art. So I believe that we are all artists. And I'll have to find the quote, but Picasso had a good quote of, you know, we're all born artists, and then, you know, something happens, it's like trained out of us. And I believe that. And I think if we, like you were saying, you call yourself, you're more comfortable calling yourself a creative, find what's comfortable for you within that creative realm and own it. Right? Because again, some people get.
I'm more like your friend. I love dressing. I love clothes because it's like my body is a palette. Tattoos, not my thing. Love other people's tattoos, not my thing, you know? Yet there are times that a woman came up to me once and said, I love how you dress. My husband would never let me dress like that. And without skipping a beat, I said, you need a new husband. Because I think what she was saying is, I would like to do what you do, but I'm not brave enough. And so I'm going to give my power to him. You know, my husband, whom I've been married to for 40 years, you would not look and say he's creative. He doesn't paint and all that, but he's totally creative in his own way. You know, his way, he could navigate by the stars. I mean, he's a naturalist, you know. So I think, again, it's finding what's ours, what is our natural, I like to call them superpowers, you know, because they're our own ways of expressing ourselves in the world. And we can stop them if we want to and say, no, that person wouldn't let me, that person wouldn't allow it. You know, I was in a group once and I said something like, yeah, I dress really outrageous. And someone said, is that your thought or someone else's? And it stopped me in my tracks because it wasn't my thought. I don't really think I'm outrageous. But I knew where it came from, and it wasn't my thought. It was my mother's thought, right? So
Yeah.
again, it's being in our own body and saying, okay, where am I creative and how do I want to share that with
Yeah.
the world and
Yeah.
with myself? We don't have to share it. There's all kinds of art that I do that nobody has any idea. They have no idea. And people come to my house and they're like, holy moly, are you creative? Yeah, I am, but I don't necessarily sell it all. Does that mean that I'm not creative because I don't get money for it? Do you know? So I think it's questioning and challenging some of the ideas that we have about creativity, which is part of why I was so excited to talk about creativity with you, because I felt like you were so brave saying, I don't have all these things together that I think maybe I should have, but I have enough together that I'm going to start from someplace. And I'm going to talk with somebody that I like, that I feel safe and connected with. And we're going to just go from there, you know, and that's enough. That's enough. And it's good. It's good enough. You
Yes.
know, another thing I want to say is Bill and I have this saying right now where it started with him washing windows. And he was washing windows and standing back going, gosh, they're not clean. Oh, and he'd do it again. Finally, he said, you know, they're a B. They don't have to be an A. They're a B. That's good enough. And so in our world, between the two of us, a lot of times we look at each other and go, it's a B, and have it be good enough that it doesn't have to go to that perfectionistic thing that we were talking about earlier,
I love
right? That it's good enough.
I love that. I love that. And that's so
Mm,
beautiful that you two are so
mm,
comfortable with one another, have this, very lightheartedness about these things. We can all recognize we want it to be perfect, right? But you guys have stepped back and you're like, how lovely. It's a B. We did the best we could with what we had. And that's as good as it gets right now.
that's right. Right. Well, even in relationship, Nicole, right? The number of times people say, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. And I say, luck has nothing to do with it. Thank you. We've been doing this for 40 years. That happens to be where we're at now. But
Yeah.
when we were in our 20s, we weren't necessarily there.
Yeah.
So again, you know, having relationship, like creativity, it all matures. And I think having it be letting ourselves mature and not staying stuck in a way in the childhood wounds, instead growing ourselves up and maturing ourselves to say, I'm going to challenge that,
Mm.
right? And I'm going to be more of the full being that I am. Why not? You know, I have a tea business, Mushroom Mama. You know, if I invested $50,000, I could have a national brand. I know that. I have a rockin' product. Not my thing. Might be somebody else's thing. So does that mean that Mushroom Mama is a failure because it's not a national brand? No, it doesn't. The people who love this tea would say it's awesome. So again, it's my idea of whether it's successful or not. There's so many things that are so good about it. Working out the recipes, figuring out how to package it, making the labels, finding where it's going to be sold and all that. And for me now, it's connecting with people that I feel are a good fit with it. There's some big stores I don't want to be in. Thank you very much. Not my thing. And so it feels like it's good enough for me. And I
Yeah.
really had to work that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to. I was talking to someone earlier in an interview about this kind of societal pressure, right? Of what something needs to look like. And I believe we need to come back in, just like what you did. The choice that you made with your teas is, what do you want? How do you want it to look? To what scale do you want to take it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah, because I could grow it for sure. I could, spend a lot more time and a lot more money, and not my thing. I want to be able to have time to cook and to create and go for walks in the woods and still have my sweet tea business, which is doing great and is growing organically as it will. And I didn't feel that at the beginning. At the beginning, I had these ideas of what it was supposed to look like, and have two people tell me, you have to invest and you've got to do this and give away all this tea in order to build the brand. And it's all good, not my thing. And I think part of that, Nicole, for me, is growing older and realizing, oh, there's constantly things that are going to be right in my face, that are going to be challenging me. Do I do it with the narrative of how someone else thinks it should look, or do I do it for what works for Harmony? And I think that's a place for many of us to anchor in what works for me, not necessarily how it should look for someone else. Or, and to me, part of that is the feminine, coming into the feminine, because many of us don't really know what that means. And it's not a male versus female or anything like that. It's coming into, I am a woman. I don't think logically. I don't think in a linear. I don't think linear. I'm all over the place. I'm in a spiral. And I once heard Jean Shinoda Bolen. She's one of my heroes. She's a Jungian analyst and a circle woman, and wrote The 100th Circle. And I heard her talk, and she was all over the place. And at the end, she said, and I will never apologize for being all over the place.
yeah,
I'm a woman.
yeah,
That's how I think.
yeah,
And I felt like she gave me so much permission to kind of find my own flow, find my own way,
yeah,
and not have it look like, and I think many of us are discovering that. We don't necessarily have a map that tells us how to do that,
right.
because the feminine is that we're going in and finding that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a great visual I saw. It's probably somewhere, but I don't know if I had it. And it said, just for blanket terms, and I apologize, we're not leaving anyone out, showed a male brain and it showed a waffle, right? All these little compartments. This is here, this is there. And then it showed a woman's brain and it was spaghetti. Right? And I just love that. It was just all
And we need both. We need both, but we're kind of dominant in one, and we're a little masculine heavy in a lot of ways,
yes.
where the feminine really is being curious and finding that flow, and the I don't know, but I'm going to go in anyway,
Yeah.
and being okay with that.
Yeah.
and so, yeah.
And that's what art is like with the business, with the things that I do, I'll visualize. It's like, okay, let's go into waffle brain. Which room do we need to be in? Which compartment do we need to be in? And then when I jump into my creativity, it's like, oh, good, here's the mess flat, and one thought leads to another, to another, to another. And that's where I'm happy, and where I
Mm,
feel I struggled for so long is, I was told my brain doesn't think the right way, a dyslexic, and all these different things. And I grew up with all of these freaking labels. And I think the labels do so much harm. And I'm on one of these forums with all these parents talking about their dyslexic children. And over and over and over again,
mm,
the advice that I give is, pray, they'll show their children's artwork, but then crying and pulling their hair out about what the teachers are saying about their kids. And I say, praise these children for what they're good at, for what they gravitate towards.
mm,
Move them through that,
mm,
be more auditory. If there's certain homework they need to get done, make it a game, make it playful, make it interactive, because that's how their brain is going to click on. It's so disheartening, and I know
mm.
you've seen this because you've done so much work with children, where they expect all children to learn in one way, and if you can't learn in that way, there's something wrong with you. It's like the visual. I love visuals. It's like the visual I saw, and they had a monkey and an elephant and a lion and like 5 different animals, right? And it's like the test is who can climb to the top of the mountain, climb to the top of the tree and back down at this time, you're good, right? And the visual was so impactful because we're different. We're not all the same. We don't all learn the same way. And I just have a lot of issue with the school system, especially with teachers who don't value and notice each child for their own gifts, right? And that creative thinking
Yes.
is put down because it's not in this linear factory learning way. I kind of went off on a tangent, but
You
speak
know,
to that more.
it's all good. You know, it's been years since a Harvard researcher named Howard Gardner put out his research about at least 8 different styles of learning. And I was so happy to know that at the beginning of my teaching career, if you want to call it that. But many schools do not implement what he said. So, we teach to the left brain logical learning where, there's people who learn through movement and spatially. And so it's unfortunate that a lot of children who are diagnosed or labeled in school just have a different style of learning.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah,
And at the beginning of this year, we were going to homeschool 2 of our grandlittles, and Maya's 6. And so she's just learning to read. And it was so fun to be with her because she moves everywhere. I wasn't expecting that she's going to sit down and learn her letters. We're crawling all over the floor and we're making Play-Doh letters, and because I know that she's going to learn through moving around. So the more that we understand that some of us are logical, mathematical learners, and that's awesome. One step, then another step, then another, but many of us are not.
yeah,
And so, it's unfortunate when we're children that a lot of people, including our parents and educators, don't understand that. And as we find ourselves as adults, we need to heal those ideas that were taught to us when we were younger and challenge them and say, I'm the mother now. I'm the educator now. I'm the one that makes these decisions for myself and take our power back from those who were misguided. They just didn't know. So often, like there's a woman that I used to do parent coaching and that I worked with, and she had two adopted Chinese daughters. And they were the best at everything. They were the best at swimming, the the best at skiing, the best. And I said to her, at some point, they're not going to be the best at something, and trying to coach her so that she would realize that you can't be great at everything. She stopped doing coaching with me because she was convinced that her girls were going to be the best at everything. And okay, I couldn't change her way of thinking. All I could do was offer her that thought, and then she could do what she does with it. So I think it's, us showing up with where we are in our process and loving ourselves enough to challenge some of those ideas and say, now, who I am, where I find myself, I'm going to make a breakthrough with this, right? And that there's nothing wrong with me. This ADD, ADHD, all that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm saying I've seen when I used to go into kindergartens and teach social emotional learning, nobody knew really what that was. I mean, just for me to teach happy, sad, mad, afraid, just to be able to have a vocabulary was like earth shattering, right? So it takes all of us to do some of this healing. And I would offer what I could to the teachers, and then they're going to do whatever they do with it, right? We're going to reach the people that we reach who say, I'm going to challenge that, and I'm going to do it in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say to and especially now during this time, a lot of this is now on Zoom, which is so unnatural for children to just place them in front of a computer all day long. And I know that a lot of parents are really in a pickle because they have to work, they're on Zoom, what would your advice be to parents who are just thinking that something is wrong with their kid, and how to get them out of that mindset of something's wrong with this kid and be like, no, look at the good things? Like how would you kind of approach that? Because like we were talking about earlier, if the kid is getting from their parent and the teacher that something is wrong with them, that becomes a belief system, right? And most kids are brilliant. It's really the way that they're being forced to process this information. And I hadn't heard of that before. 8 different learning styles. That's amazing. I knew there were a few, but
at least 8 different learning styles. I'll go back to myself as a young mother, because I'm a much better grandmother than I was a mother, because I've had lots of time to heal and to be in my body, So as a young mother, when I was 25, I felt like I had a hole. And it was that I wasn't good enough. And now this child was going to make me better. And that all of my unmet needs, I was going to put onto this child. So much, we project so much onto our children, expecting them to be something that perhaps we're not, and that we want them to heal us in that way. What children want is their parents' attention. They want their parents' love. That's what they want more than anything. When my grandchildren come over, what they want to do is sing and dance and play and eat and be with me. They don't want to perform. And a lot of us are like teaching children to perform. You do something, the child will do something, and we're like, yay, you. They're not performers. And so I think it's us doing our healing as much as we can. And I will say, when I taught preschool, some of the best advice that I would give to parents, and this one dad told me that it changed his life because he was away at work all day. So people still are away at work, even if they're online, they're working. And I would tell him, when you come home, 15 minutes with your child. No phone, no anything else. Be on the phone and let your child lead and do what your child wants you to do, which could be drawing, could be playing Legos, could be whatever the child wants to do. Because often as parents, we think we're giving our children our attention when what we're doing is cooking and cleaning, and I know all that. There's only so much time in a day. I had 3 children, and there's the end of the day you're fried, yet the days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into years, and we got 20 years with these beings. And so I think so much of it is doing our own healing and slowing down enough to see our children, to really see who they are and their beingness, not their doingness. We're not human doings, we're human beings. And my grandchildren do not thrive, especially the little ones, they do not thrive in front of a computer. The older one, the 9-year-old one, she wants technology because everybody else has technology. So it's a conundrum for children a lot. And when I taught preschool, I remember a dad being really nervous about his child entering kindergarten. And the kindergarten school that the school he was going to for kindergarten called me and said I was not preparing the children for kindergarten. And I said, "You're right, I'm not. I'm not even trying," because they're preschoolers. When do they get to be preschoolers? So I said to this dad, "Your kid needs to be digging holes and climbing trees. He's a 5-year-old boy. That's really what he needs. Keep giving him that. He will thrive. He will learn to read and write."
Yeah.
The dad thought I was a little wackadoodle, I'll tell you. But I was driving one day, a couple years later, to a friend's house, and I get out of my car, and this man's wife had seen me driving down the road and had followed me and pulled me over and said, "My child is thriving. And thank you for that information," because I kept saying to my husband, "Let him go outside. Let him climb trees. Let him dig holes. Let him play with sticks." Because he was a 5-year-old boy. That's what he needed to do. He learned how to read. Nobody had to keep drilling it into him over and over and over. He's a thriving teenager now. So I think it's also trusting that, our children are going to unfold to be the beings that they are, not that we want them to be. And
Right.
that we need to focus on who we want ourselves to be and model that for them.
Right.
I know it's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah. You know what, Harmony? This is what you just said reminds me of how much I adore you, because you speak from your heart. And like I could picture myself in that situation and being a little mousy and maybe not wanting to say to the dad, because and you even said, like, a few people have walked away from you because you have been true and authentic to what you believe, and you say it, and not everyone's ready to hear it. But just like that mom who chased you down and is like, you were right. I love that. I love that about you, that you are so confident and secure within your, right? You go in, we all have our stuff, but you go in and you speak from your truth and you speak from your heart, whether or not it's something somebody wants to hear. And I think that's such a beautiful beautiful essence that you carry and that I've always admired in you.
Oh,
So
well,
it's
thank
so
you.
beautiful.
That's really sweet of you.
Well, it's
I do want to say, sometimes I open mouth and insert foot,
that's Sagittarius. We yes. Oh
but
yes.
right. But if I start, especially if it's around a child, I generally can show up um, as the mature adult that I feel like I am for a child. And I've learned over the 20 years that I taught preschool, I really learned that as I was giving something to a child that was love, understanding, that I would give that some of that to myself. That
Exactly.
it really was, sorry you didn't get that when you were a kiddo. But now I really believe it's up to us to mother ourselves and to be there for ourselves. So the children taught me so much. And the parents too. I mean, the parents were totally a pain in my butt because they were like me, you know. And I would just watch the children and let them be the ones that led and saw that they were naturally expressive and creative and messy and loud, and that was to be celebrated and not to be scrunched. So I do my best to give that to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it. And there's you know, it's so funny. I mean, the open mouth, enter foot thing. It's what my mantras I've had to go through my life is like, wait, you know, don't send the email, process it. And I think that there is a lot of wonderfulness to that, as well as, again, for me in my creative life, that I choose what I show and what I don't, but I let it go. Right. And also with that, loving yourself the way that you wanted that love as a child. That's where, when I see children's art, when I see people just making it funny and fun, when their child draws on the wall and they put a frame up on it, it's like, oh, how can I let that in and almost rewrite my experiences as a child and give myself that love, right? That encouragement.
Oh, yes, yes. I have to say, my son Sky, as they have an amazing house, and he can do all sorts of things himself. And he was so proud to take me into the bathroom and show me that he was painting the bathroom. And his youngest daughter, who's 5 at the time, came and started doing her painting on the wall. And he stopped and said, you can paint right here. And so and so his other children came and did the same thing. So it's this beautiful bathroom. And then you've got this frame, just like what you were talking about, part of the wall that the 3 children painted, that I started crying when I saw it. It was so healing for me to see that a dad can be like, yeah, I'll paint and make the walls all white and beautiful and all. And here's a space over here for you to do your art. And oh, and then I go into his garage. No, he's my baby, right? Go into his garage, and he's got an entire wall that's the children's artwork. That's just one after another, collaged all over this wall. And he said, I now have to be selective with what goes up, because they'll like scribble something and say, here, it's the wall. And he says, no, 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 you're right. Like, I'll pick and choose what I want to put up there. And it is lovely. And it's because he values their creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are going to
Yeah.
be there's such a level of freedom that these little beings will have when they have that love and that nurturing. And for people who didn't get that, you can give that to yourself. And I've seen, I think it's clearly two different people, but something I saw was a mom and her child, the child would make just a drawing, and then the mom would do these gorgeous paintings like around part of the child drawing. And in another one, the mom would paint like this gorgeous portrait and let the kid basically draw the kid body. And I love looking at that because I bring it in as if I got to experience that. And I just feel the love and the connection between those parents and the brilliance that the parent was able to do that, or it was just natural. And again, I know not everyone has
And
that.
it's healing.
It is.
It's healing.
It is.
Yeah, it's healing for the mama and
Yeah.
the papa to be able to show up like that.
Yeah.
Because it's healing to your inner child. You know, we all have those places that wasn't given to us. So when you give it to your children, you give it to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I know. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, this has been so good. I think we should do it again.
Yay. We could focus another time on cooking or food, or you and I have a lot of things, passions that we have that we could chat about. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
So if you could give, you know, in our time right now, mid-December 2020, if you could give someone a nugget to encourage them with their creativity, what would it be?
I think part of what you said earlier, spend a few minutes doing something you love that has nothing to do with anybody else, that is just, you know, I feel like drawing this, or I'm going to make that food, whatever it is, something that has nothing to do with anyone else, just has to do with you and an impulse that you have, and to be kind to yourself with however it turns out, whatever it looks like, to just be like, that's good enough, it's a bee.
Right. Right. Oh, I love that. It's a bee. I'm definitely going to adopt that.
What
That
a
is
C.
beautiful. It's right. Or D minus. It's all right.
Whatever. To just try it. To just do it. To just try it.
Yeah.
You know, I will say, when I serve people food, if you come over to my house to eat, plenty of times I'm tasting it for the first time when anybody else tastes it. And I've learned that the kind of cook that I am is a very intuitive cook. So I start getting a taste in my mouth. I'm like, okay, whatever that is, I'm going to make that. And then I cook. And I'll serve it often to my husband and say, I haven't tasted it yet. I hope it's good. And he'll be like, you haven't tasted it. And for a while, I would be like, what's wrong with me, right? I didn't even taste it. How odd is that? But generally, it's awesome. So I've learned that that's how I cook, right? So it's learning who we are and trusting who we are and just being in that and in the joy of us. I think a lot of us have had the joy kind of smushed out of us, you know, whether it's this time or any other time. When I look around, people aren't necessarily happy, but children are happy. So they taught me a lot about just being happy, just being content, not happy like woohoo, woo, being content in our own bodies, in our own beings with who we are. Yeah. So just try something, spend 5 minutes. When we talked earlier, when you said art before breakfast, I was like, I love that. You know, some kind of creativity, something that has something to do with you, whether it's playing music or, you know, cooking something or drawing something. There's 101 ways to be creative. Sitting down, writing, just do it. just do it. Hey,
Right.
someone needs that logo.
Right.
Or something. Just do it.
Just do it. Oh, yeah. The art before breakfast is
Right?
actually Art Before Breakfast is a book that a client had
Ah,
told me about, and I got it from the library. And it's so wonderful, like, and it goes along with this conversation that we're having, which is just do it, right? Just give yourself some time, some space, whether it's 2 minutes, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it turns into an hour or all day, to make the kind of creativity that you enjoy, that you want to get into, and let it become part of your life. And sometimes all you have is 5 minutes. I talk to busy moms and they're like, all I have is 20 minutes, in the morning before my child wakes up. Great. Take 5 of those, right? And or 10 of those, or all 20,
right.
and do for you first. Feed that creativity first. The other thing that becomes very obvious, especially if you do it first thing in the morning, it sets the tone of your day. If you want to learn how to draw and you're like, I don't have time, right? I don't have time for the hours and hours of the courses or this or that. But if you literally, like this guy was showing, draw your breakfast, and it can suck, right? It can be stick figures. It doesn't have to be accurate. But if you do this every day and you start your morning in this creative process, you're going to be amazed at the switch that gets turned on in your mind about creativity, and you're going to find more time throughout your day, and you're going to find that you feel more creative throughout your day. So the
Mhm.
morning time, I feel, is so precious, whether it's a meditation, whether it's the time you have with your coffee cup, or spend time with the dog or with the children, whatever. Your morning sets the tone of your day. And so I really encourage
Mhm.
people is, you know, and this may take some time, but again, even if it just starts with a couple of minutes, do something that you're really passionate about first thing in the morning, set that tone of your day, and you're going to find you have more and more time for it. That's my belief.
Yeah, yeah. And that follow your bliss, when you said passionate, follow your bliss.
Yeah.
I would say follow your curiosity,
Yes.
because I'm not always blissful about everything, but I'm curious. And so I think following that curiosity of, I wonder what that feels like, you know, seems important to me.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, and I think songs, Lula wants to be a part of this right now, I guess. Um, what part, where was my train of thought? Oh, yeah. Certain songs can turn on certain emotions. And from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and a few people did a few versions of Pure Imagination. And I'll play that song and I'll sing along with it. And I've thought about doing a version of it. And it ignites that imagination. Like the song can do that. So sometimes we need something external, like a song or a picture or something, to remind us, right? It's like your favorite song comes on and you just find your body moving to it. Allow those things to come in too. That's a creativity too. And anything that sparks that creativity, that imagination, that thing that floods your heart with the good oxytocin and dopamine and all that stuff. It's all important. And something else that is really essential, especially these days, is to tune into things that feel good, right? Like the feel good songs, um, foods that light you up, being in nature, the little ones, all those things. So I think we both encourage you to find the thing that you want, right? Another favorite quote is, it's never too late to be what you might have been, because that might have been is
Yeah.
so, ooh. And age doesn't matter, ability doesn't matter, right? You can start to be a singer at any age. It doesn't matter. You can start to draw or paint or play music at any age. It's not too late. It's not.
Mm.
Anything else?
No, there's no time like the present.
Right, right,
There's no time like the present. You
right.
know, and let's finish with this. I have to tell you. So my mother's 91 years old, and I sent her a book. And my mother started reading. Now, I've never, ever seen my mother read anything but the National Enquirer. And I sent her a book, and she was thrilled. And my mother has become a reader at 91 years old. So there's no, now is the time. Do whatever it is you want to do, time is ticking, and, now's the time to
Right.
explore anything you want to explore.
Absolutely. And I heard another great quote, and it's like, the best time to start is yesterday. The next best time is today. And I love that. So I hope
So
this,
it is.
yeah, I hope this video encourages you and inspires you to really go for that creative spark, or any spark that you want, that maybe you've been holding off on for any reason at all. Like, give it some attention, because you can do it. It's never too late. All right, Harmony, stay on the line. It was so good to have you on. I hope we can do this again. Thank you so much. And I'll post your link.
Thanks,
I'll
Nicole.
post Harmony's link below for her teas. I have had them. They're delicious. They are awesome. I'm not just saying that. And thanks everyone for joining in. I know your time is precious, and I appreciate you spending it with us. All right, bye.